All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the CX Chronicles podcast. I am super excited for today's guest. Somya Kapoor is joining us. Somya has built this super cool company, The Loops, and she's here to tell us all about how her and her team have been tackling the four CX pillars. So, Somya, why don't you take over the microphone, say hello to the CX Nation, and let people know, how did you get into this wild, wonderful, crazy, ever-changing world of customer experience and customer success optimization?
Great. Thank you so much, Adrian, for having me over. Hi, everyone from the CX community. So nice to meet you all remotely, virtually. I can't see you, but I'm sure you're listening to my voice up here. How I did get started with this journey, Adrian, I was doing another startup where we were doing a lot more of chatbot conversational AI. So we kind of dabbled a lot with NLP over there, which is now seems so foreign with GPT coming in and disrupting that market completely, right?
Yep.
So 7 years ago, we were dabbling with conversational, and I was using the behavior. I was seeing behaviors, and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the new browser, right?
Yep.
Conversations, we're going to interact with applications this way. And I was just telling to my management at ServiceNow, that's where I was. I jumped into this startup, and I soon realized that NLP alone cannot help you resolve issues in support and success, because it'll get you to 30%, 40%, knowledge rendering, automation, repeat issues. But for the remainder 60 to 75%, especially in today's world, are all software product related issues, which requires a lot more of product usage data, log detection elements to understand where the issue was before even you can offer a resolution, right? Remember that aha moment when you type to a chatbot and saying, well, how can I resolve, talk to a live agent, and the live agent comes and says, can you send me that screenshot of the error that you're facing? And you're beating your head around the wall and saying, your product, you should know it.
Yeah, right.
So that's where we started the journey of the loop, saying that for those 70% of issues, to understand prediction of churn, contact, expansion, you really need to understand behaviors in your usage data. And if you complement that data with support data, that data with product data, that data with CRM data, the magic happens there. So you kind of bring everybody in the loop to understand prediction of escalation, prediction of churn, prediction of expansion. Nobody does prediction of expansion today, but prediction of churn and prediction of escalation. And how can you offer phenomenal experience using that? So that's pretty much what the loops is in a nutshell. We have moved from the word intelligent CX operations platform to AI-driven CX.
I like that add-on.
Because I fundamentally believe AI has arrived with the GPT. People are understanding the potential of what it can do. And AI is not just for the audience here. It's just not limited to GPT. There's a lot more beyond in the back end: sentiment, clustering, anomaly detection, behavior detection on the data that can fundamentally change the way you're doing business, can really increase your customer lifetime value. And, the mantra that we all are talking about, doing more with less, right? It's not taking human jobs away, but it's assisting humans in a way that will increase your productivity.
I love it. And honestly, I mean, Somya, you and I were kind of just talking about this before diving in today, but look, the reality is, for folks in business across the world today, there are a lot of changes happening, right? Every single solitary week, we're seeing a new example of some major corporation, like a global corporation, showing signs of slimming down or showing signs of reducing costs, showing signs of essentially preparing for whatever market or economic outlook they're preparing for. And it's not as great as it was just a few years ago. But what you just mentioned right there, thinking about how CX and CS leaders can leverage not just AI, but any type of alternative solution that allows maybe a smaller group of people, a smaller team, one with less resources, one less with. You hear this constant talk about like less bandwidth. We're all gonna have less bandwidth if you don't have as many teammates. But there's something really interesting about what you guys are building with the loops, and that is to give the power of insights, the power of additional themes, leveraging data. And let's call it what it is. A lot of fantastic CX and CSP people that are running massive CX and CS organizations at global companies, they don't necessarily know how to leverage some of this artificial intelligence. They don't necessarily, without either their product team or their data science team. They don't know how to look for some of those insights. They know this stuff because obviously they spend time with their folks in product and data, and that's where they try to take the stories that they can go and communicate to leadership team, communicate to investors, communicate to customers. But so many with growth companies, it's a different ballgame, right? You have guys and gals that are trying to do the best that they can, sometimes even with limited data sets, right? So maybe they don't have the ability to aggregate their CRM or their issue resolution management system or their telephonics. So they don't have the ability to lever what's actually lying directly inside of their house, their ecosystem today. So I love the fact that the Loops was really kind of built to take some of that information, make it usable, be able to help some of these leaders be able to tell a story, and then connecting dots. I think that's the one big thing, and I love the loops. I was going to get to you. Why the loops? Creating feedback loops, right? As CX and CS leaders, one of our biggest jobs is to make sure that we're managing up, right, to our executive leadership team, and we know exactly the good, the bad, the ugly, the big opportunities, but then managing down, right? You're going to manage down to all of the different teams that you work with, and then lastly, managing to the customers, right? I think like but not enough companies realize that the better you can get at communicating to your customers on a regular basis about what's working really well and what we're working on or what we'll get back to, that's the type of brands that people look at and they say, those are incredible CX driven, customer centric driven companies right there. So I love it. I love some of the things that you guys are doing. Somya, do you want to dive in to the first pillar of the team? I'd love to hear how, number one, as you got the loop started, how'd you go about building your team? And what were some of the initial teams, departments, or roles that you knew you had to invest in? Because you spent some time at some awesome companies before starting the loops, right? You spent time at SAP, you spent time at ServiceNow, you saw how some really big companies kind of operate. How did you kind of go about building up the team? What were some of the stepping stones, or what were some of the initial activities that you knew that you were going to invest in with getting the right people on the bus, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, no, absolutely. One point I wanted to highlight as you were talking about, Adrian, in the comments you were making, yes, right? The teams can't hire data scientists or data analysts anymore. Big organizations could do that. There's actually a McKinsey study done with prediction of CX. They said, it's already arrived, right? And there's a case study in there. They said they spent 3 months of 12 to 15 data scientists time, and they saw a 800-point increase in CSAT score and 25 to 60% reduction. Sorry, not 25, 60% reduction in churn.
Whoa.
Now imagine every organization, and I'll send you the link. You can link it in the podcast to the case studies, McKinsey's case study. Every organization cannot afford to hire those data scientists, right? What GPT has shown, or what platforms like Loops can offer, is how you make this AI accessible to a business user, right? You don't need to have a data science degree. You don't need to do Python. You just need to understand how to drag and drop and understand your business, the data that you're seeing. How do you want to leverage in terms of trends, clusterings, and stuff? So just wanted to make that point. You're absolutely right. It has arrived.
Yep.
You don't need to build these teams in-house. People always assume they want to do that. And the second thing I keep hearing people say is, my data is not in right shape. Like, guys, nobody's data is in right shape.
Yeah, right.
It'll never be.
Yeah.
But do you want to understand the gaps of your data? Use AI, because that's what it'll start to tell you where the gaps are. Anyhow, now coming back to your question, Adrian, on what the team that I got started. Well, I'm a VC-backed startup. So I would say the initial 1.5 years of any startup are product teams. So 85% of my team was a product team with data engineers, data scientists, and machine learning engineers that we built to kind of build this startup, to build a platform for simplicity. And then we went ahead and added designers, because it's one area to bring the data in, and then here, look at the cool model I have. But how do you consume it for the business users? How do as a CX users really consume it? So I created a team of data engineer, data scientists that build the product with developers. They build the product in terms of connectors. And then I hired designers with a group of advisors that were from the CX community itself. Awesome. For instance, Ben, who is a chief customer officer and advisor to us from Netscope, Michael Herbert from Smartsheets, Christy from Bloomreach. These customers who are actually practitioners feeling the pain, to come and give advice to the loops in terms of how we're extending and expanding things. Zach from Packet team, I can keep naming, created a group of about 9 to 10 advisors that constantly gave us feedback on what we were building.
That's all. So first of all, the thing that I love about that is number one, practicing what you preach, right? Talking about getting living, breathing, candid feedback right from a bunch of people that are going to be the guys and gals that are number one, have these problems, right? They already have these problems within their organization. But number two, they kind of know they've got a background and they got an experience set for understanding sort of where we've been, I guess, from a customer experience, customer success, customer support perspective, right? How companies have traditionally thought about this, but then more importantly, thinking about like what are some of the ways that are going to help us get to where we're trying to go. So that's super, super cool. Um, it makes me think too, Somya, like not enough growth companies do what you just said. Most growth companies and most VC-backed companies, they have advisors. That's probably everybody. But this notion of building like a customer council or like a strategic advisory council super early on, before you place a bunch of super expensive bets that you don't necessarily know how they're going to kind of reach their fruition, is super duper smart. And then the other thing too is just like I got to imagine, for any growth business, and some of with us at CXC, we work with a ton of growth companies too, but like it's amazing how many folks don't necessarily know how to ask the right type of questions early on. So for you, having that strategic advisory group, a bunch of guys and gals that have been asking customers questions for years and already kind of know the inner workings of support and success, super duper smart. It must have been really, really helpful to kind of get some of those initial targets, for lack of a term, things to aim for, right? Things to aim for, or even just with understanding how you were going to try to get early user feedback and try to get early user color and try to get just early user sentiment for how you guys could build the loops in the future and continue to kind of refine your product and the product offering. So I love that. That's a super, super smart idea right there.
No, absolutely, Adrian. I think, in my all past gigs in big companies, we've always built strategic advisory. It was always good to get at SAP and ServiceNow because of the brand. You can pick and choose the customers that you think are forward thinking. But in a startup, right, we were very fortunate enough to have some of these advisors kind of land in our portfolio and kind of, looking at strategic, not only, that are today, but future vision of what a solution like this can, grapple and kind of add value, which really helped us in kind of building and shaping and taking a platform approach as opposed to a point solution. So the business outcomes that we talk from the loops in terms of auto classification, routing, agent assist capability, prediction of escalations, product feedback analysis. If you look at it in the market, they're all point solutions available to some of these elements. But then we really educated and kind of built a platform saying that point solutions over a period of time will give you a gap of data, right? Using a product feedback to do topic modeling, now I can get down into the weeds, is same relevant for auto classification and routing, is same relevant to provide a lot of automation stuff as well in your product downstream, right?
Yep.
So you build it multiple in different tools because your organization is so siloed enough. But
Yep.
if you build it right from a platform standpoint between success and support, now imagine both the teams are aligned on the same outcome that the company wants to drive, which is to prevent churn from happening, which is to add to the bottom line. But that unfortunate information doesn't get trickled downstream because everybody's living siloed in these siloed tools, right?
Yeah,
So Loop
absolutely.
kind of brings all of that together. So it was a lot of work, I would say, Adrian, in the first 1.5 to 2 years of building a platform. But now the value is completely seen by our customers that are using it.
I love it. I got to ask you before we move off of the first pillar team, how did you and your team begin to find success with finding your very first sets of customers, the very, very early ones, like your first, when you knew, not only you knew that you were in a good space to build, but nothing is better for a founder or for any entrepreneur than when you find those first sets of customers that are willing to pay for the
Yeah.
thing or the product that you built or the services that you're delivering. How did you and the team kind of find those first early customers that started to use the loops and show you guys what the future was going to look like and show you how you were going to continue to iterate on the product?
Adrian, you kind of hit it, right? The first 1.5 years was all building the product. And then I hired my digital marketer, and you've met her. She's phenomenal. And that was one of the key hires. People pretty much hire salespeople as their first hires. And I would say, no, in today's world, it's actually a digital marketer.
Yeah.
Because the kind of buzz and momentum that marketer can create in terms of getting your vision and your articulation at scale out there
Yep.
is phenomenal, which kind of helps in driving the leads and with the aha moment, right? So we
I
kind of
love that.
started with there. where my digital marketer, we started doing webinars, at top level, even before even the industry events were open, right? I mean, the world was pretty shut down. We
Yep.
started Loops in 2020 and it was literally shut down to 2022.
Yep.
So that kind of helped us get the word out there and, really hound on the problem.
Yep.
I would say we didn't get it right the first time because we were like, oh, usage data combined with NLP. And then support is like, but I just want deflections, right?
Yeah, right.
And success is like, but I just don't want to, bring all this data together. And there's so much noise. They were not even talking about prediction of churn at that point, right?
Yep.
So it took a while, but one of the things that was so, we spoke to 100 customers by then by just, doing digital marketing and getting a sense of it. One of the things that we realized, which is an aha moment at that point, Adrian, is that none of the customers said no. They said, yeah, I have that problem, but, I'm going through a Salesforce upgrade, or I'm going through, moving from this tool to that tool right now, from Zendesk to Salesforce,
Sure.
Salesforce to Zendesk,
Yeah.
wherever, right? This
Yeah.
year. But next year is my time to talk about this and kind of get into this, right? That was an aha moment for us to say that, okay, yes, this is going to have its value, it's going to have its moment, and come 2023, the moment has arrived, where people need something. They have to continue to evolve with the growth paradigms that they're setting up, but they can't hire people. They're all squeezed out of resources. I mean, I cannot tell you, every meeting I get down to, people are like, I don't have resources. I don't have resources to make all of this, right? And we're like, don't worry, we'll come and just, put 3 connectors in here and boom, press this button.
Yep.
That's the output.
I
And we're
like that. That sounds pretty magical and easy right there, Somya. So
Yay.
Somya, I'd love to dive into the second CX pillar of tools. And you just started to kind of paint that picture, but basically the loops, to your point about the connectors, we'll add these 3 connectors. You guys connect with a bunch of the leading CX and CSS solutions that are already out there. So many of our listeners, guys, Somya and the team at Loops are literally already building connection, and they're building aggregation technology for all the tools that we're using every single solitary day to run our customer portfolio. So Zendesk, Intercom, Salesforce, HubSpot, there's the list goes on and on, but I'd like to hear from you, Somya. How, number one, spend a couple minutes kind of just talking about the way that you and the team at the Loops had to build out your own tech stack, because that's literally one part of the story. But the other part of the story is, from that, how did you guys kind of start to understand which tools the Loops would integrate with and which tools you would begin to help your customers, for lack of a better term, start to aggregate and compile this information so that you could see some of these insights, or you could see some of these trends in one singular area to make sense of it, and then most importantly, to act upon it. I'd love to just kind of hear you talk about tools for a few minutes.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Adrian. So my co-founder, who's the CTO of the Loops, I call him my partner in crime. This is his 5th startup. I might be off on a few numbers here or there, but he is a guy that's got 26 patents under his belt. He's worked with log data, machine learning. In last startup, he did a lot of NLP over there, coming with big data. So he's so used to building platforms with multiple data connectors. He's built one for, Splunk, Caspita, which got bought by Splunk, which was bringing log data in. So the elements of a platform like this require to have an understanding of that you are going to connect to multiple systems. You don't have to pull all the data in, right? Because you're bringing product data in, and product data is massive, as you can understand. You can't pull it from one warehouse to the other.
Yep.
So you build a federated query engine, and then based on that, on top of that, you need to apply a lot more of machine data sets, right? So it was an event-based architecture, which traditional ticketing CRM systems are not based on. That when an event happens, and that event could be anything, right? It could be a click in a product, or it could be a ticket creation, or it could be a conversation starting. That needs to go ahead and correlate data from these various systems and then provide insights at the top level. So I'm very, simplifying the complexity of the architecture that he built with multiple models in there. That's the thing that we need to start with from a fundamental standpoint. And the UI, the way we need to build, is configurable to the way the platform is configurable, because everybody has their processes so different that there's no standardization across support and success and downstream, right? Even though we can classify companies into growth companies, or, B2B companies, or B2C, whatever you call it, everybody has a different process element. So that was very, very important. Then we got down to doing discoveries with support and success teams. Okay, which areas do we pick into, right? We started getting into some of the events where people were like Intercom. Intercom can get along with Salesforce. Some companies have that combination. HubSpot with Intercom combination, Zendesk with there. So there has to be a ticketing solution. There has to be a CRM solution. And then there needs to be a usage solution. Usage solution could be in any facet about, amplitude, segment has a real-time streaming as opposed to amplitude and Pendo. And
Yep.
then some of our more B2B customers even had log and sentry data in there as well, which was
Okay.
adding to their, complexity. Once we kind of highlighted these 3-4 buckets, and then collaboration on Slack, right? I
Yep.
mean, that you can't live without that anymore, right?
Yep.
You're
100%.
inundated every day, getting up in the morning and looking at your Slack channel to see how many threads you've gotten, right?
Isn't that your
Uh,
favorite part of the day, though, Somya, right there?
I know, right? Everybody does it, and support and success leaders live and breathe that,
They
right?
do. They do.
Because they've got all their customer interactions now happening over there, or for premium customers, right? Definitely,
Definitely.
that's the level of support that everybody expects.
And I was just thinking remote work too. So many of us over these last 3 years, to your point, the world got changed rapidly in the last 3 years. So now, even today, companies that didn't think that they would ever be remote or hybrid companies, they are. If you want excellent people, this has become a common demand for people that want to be able to have flexibility. Maybe not completely remote, but at least hybrid, and having the time when you're kind of working afar and you have team across the world and across, from different geos from each other. But I'm saying this also because the exchange internally still has a tremendous amount of value to most voice of customer sets, meaning like the things that the CX, the CS, the support teams know, talk about internally, share together. So me and Adrian, hey, we just had this client situation. Let's talk about X, Y, and Z. Those become variables that you could theoretically build back into some of this reporting. And theoretically, those become variables in which, if you're not already thinking about how to bake some of that stuff into your VOC efforts, you have to, because there's, as great as Slack is, as great as some of these communication tools are, and I know you know where I'm going with this, so many growth companies that don't have maybe that level of maturity yet, or they have not figured out how to do the regular refinement or the regular auditing of the information that's going into select tools. As great as it can be, can also be a slippery slope, right? Because there's some companies we work with where they literally are dropping everything into Slack. Great, cool, fine, love that y'all love it. Who is going back on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis? Who's doing a data audit? Who's understanding which sentiment themes, or which different, to your point of MPL, what types of buzzwords, commonalities are we talking about every damn day that need to make their way into our voice of customer reporting, and that need to make their way back to our executive leadership team and back to the rest of our teams, even if they are siloed, to make sure that everybody understands what's really going on with customers. That's the one thing I want to call is, as much as I love it, there's so many teams that still need to kind of do a little bit of work of thinking about how to stratify some of that stuff and put it in the right areas. And I love that you're laying out, like, for example, the CRM piece, the issue resolution management piece, the usability piece. Those are a bit more clean and cut and dried to me. I just think our listeners have got to be mindful of, like, think about when you're putting really, really pertinent information into Slack, that you maybe be going into one of those other places so that you can do something with them later. That's the one thing that I always am kind of calling out, because we just see so much great stuff get lost in Slack or in Teams, because people aren't kind of thinking about that last part of how to make sure you're always kind of flagging the actionable items.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's super critical in terms of, how we make things happen. So yeah, no, absolutely. Those were the elements. And I think from there on, Adrian, everything became simple. Then you just keep adding and layering different set of tools, connectors. As of today, the loops have 35 connectors as part of
Awesome.
their
That's great.
input. And it's kind of broken down into these 3 main buckets at a high level that I define.
I love it. Question for you. I know you literally brought this up at the beginning of the show. What happens when some of these companies or some of these customers who are ripe for the solution, they're ripe for this need, they need this additional support, they need a company or solution like the loops to help them just to see clearer, right? To see a clearer picture and to be able to figure out. So many of these growth companies aren't that great with either populating their CRM effectively, or they're not great with, I mean, we see countless growth companies that don't know how to use ticketing effectively, right? Whether they're missing their tags, or whether they're missing definitions, or whether they're not doing the regular audit. What do you do with that? Is it still just picking up and starting with, let's see what your data today says in its current form? Is there sometimes, from time to time, is there a little bit of, I guess, for lack of a better term, like data hygiene or a cleansing process that does need to happen to be able to see some of the stuff that the loops can really kind of spit out. What does that kind of look like? What happens when you do see some of these prospects that, like, the reality is they do have, their data is a little bit difficult to sort through, and there maybe some of the connective tissue isn't easy to form?
No, absolutely. I think that is there, right? So most of these tools, I'll just start with the ticketing solution example, for instance, like a Zendesk Intercom, right? Most of these tools do offer connectivity to CRM, to Jira, right? But all of them were built on point-to-point solutions, right? So what if I want to connect to CRM data, and then I figure out I want to do groupings, and that grouping segments, and then I need to do routing differently on those elements, right? I think that's where the loops kind of a platform really, really helps. Everybody's data is off. It's never perfect, but it's never been contextualized in this way. It's never been stitched together and made available to the nth node. Typically, what organizations I'm seeing having is they have a data analyst or a data scientist in their department. And then that person is spending this whole week dumping data into Tableau or a Looker and constantly building dashboards on top of that, which take another 2 weeks to get out there. And then management looks at it and says, okay, I have these 5 questions, but I'm not able to drill down further into it. But this is what I'm going to present. I did so many tickets, I resolved these so many tickets, but where was the business impact with those tickets? So I fundamentally believe the metrics are changing with this new CX world, at least at scale companies, in terms of looking at it. Oh, if I resolved a ticket, did it lead to more adoption of features post that, right? But that can only happen if you're giving the usage data out to support team. Or, you know what, by the way, if I'm connecting, why am I spending time with a customer that's paying me only $10 as opposed to someone that's paying me $1,000 from support? What fundamentally went wrong there? Either the salesperson sell the product wrong, or this customer is just whiny enough and consuming my resources, and I don't have time for that. But all those things cannot be taken into account if the data is not available, not only to management at the top tier level, but downstream now to every single employee in terms of insight. So you're not inundating with them in terms of 20 widgets. I'm not going to give the company's name out there. I can tell you literally in Zendesk, they had 20 widgets on the side panel. Can you imagine training an employee on 20 widgets on how to resolve? Like, I mean, you spend like 4 weeks kind of just doing that training, right?
Yeah.
Giving me contextual data in Zendesk, or, giving me a trigger of a support insight in Gainsight for me to say that, oh, every time this customer has opened a ticket in support, it's either been escalated or it's always shown a frustration signal. I know why this customer is now going to churn, right? So you're not waiting till the renewal to go have a meeting with the customer to realize that the churn is going to happen, but kind of mapping those elements with the usage, saying that, oh, you know what, they've just been using these 2 features. Why have they not adopted the third one right now? It's been over 6 months without even having that, I call it a doctor's diagnostic meeting with the customer. You have all the symptoms that are telling you that this customer is moving towards diabetes. So why would you wait till the nth node of, you're at a borderline doing this thing? Why don't you get ahead of the curve and give prescription in terms of, cut this, cut fat, cut your sugar intake, and get you more ready, right? That is what an AI platform can truly offer in terms of the nuggets that you get out. I feel like people get very lost into the accuracy and stuff in there.
They do.
But these are things that'll help you, right? I mean, security uses it all time. They get, 20 false positives. Sorry, false negatives. But one positive can really destroy the company, right? So I might get that little bit more noise that's abstracted, but if I'm seeing and I can prevent a churn from happening, I might as well, get, 5 false positives to kind of understand that as well. So
Totally agree. Couple things. Number one, the first thing that you called out, the democratization of data. Yes, more people need to start talking this way, because it's like, data isn't just for our data scientist friends. Data isn't just for our executive teams. It's like, hello, like the better every company in planet Earth can get at essentially leveraging the data so that each team, each department, each role, frankly, in your business can tell their story, can tell his or her story just a little bit better, You're already making your customer experiences that much better. You're also, let's turn it to the EX side, Nobody wants to work at a company where they're uninformed or misinformed or there's zero transparency. Nobody likes that. Most people hate that stuff, right? Especially smart people. Smart people want to know what the truth is. They want to get a lot of facts. They want to kind of arrive at some of their own conclusions, and then they want to add to the story. They want to kind of add and fan the flames to it. And some of the best companies that we've seen who do a fantastic job of democratizing data, but then second of all, they allow some of the best thinkers. And a lot of these thinkers might be the managers, the directors, the VPs, the guys and the gals that are doing stuff every single solitary day. They know this stuff better than anybody. And they oftentimes know your customer, your product better than anybody because they're literally building it every day. But like, that's another huge piece, Somya, right? For our listeners today, like if you guys aren't doing some of this, or if you feel like there's like closed doors around data, try to start knocking on them. Definitely start knocking on them. I think the other big thing too is if you're in a business where your executive leadership team has the tendency to micromanage because of this reason, because you don't have availability to data insights, start asking for it. Ask for it right this second. I think the other thing too is you can really truly start simple, right? If you're a business and the bulk of your information lies within your CRM, start getting accessibility to some of the key reports. If you're a service-based company or support-sided individual and you've got loads and loads of ticketing data and ticketing information, start digging into some of that. Start thinking about how you can unearth it. And last thought is just this. I think as I've had the great fortune and pleasure of meeting with so many incredible customer-focused business leaders, what I started to realize over the years of just doing this work, but really specifically with the show and the podcast and all the awesome people like you to come on, is some of the best leaders in the world, they have nothing to do with some of the difficult things that goes on behind the scenes with data governance, data aggregation, data normalization, data reporting. Where they come into play is they figure out how to take that information, take those insights, take some of those signals that you were just referring to, and tell an incredibly digestible story with them, whether it's telling the story internally to your team or whether it's telling the story to your customer. I just think for our listeners, if you want to figure out how to climb that ladder in your business and you want that director, that VP, that chief experience officer role, get ready to not only get comfortable rolling around in the data, but get even better at telling stories with data, because that's really where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And frankly, the better you get at using your validated data sets to tell those stories, that's when you get your executive leadership team's attention and they want you to come back week over week or every once a month to do a voice of customer report out or to show all the things that you're seeing. So I love that. Somya, I want to dive into
so Adrian, on that part,
yeah,
right? I think where it's evolving also from getting the data insights is how do you make them actionable downstream, right? Because yes, I've got the insights, I've got these customers, I've got them. Now I need to set my whole organization, and I both want my success and support to act in a unified manner towards these business outcomes. And by the way, these are my premium customers that I want to perform ultimate support and everything for. And these downstream customers will get this kind of help in terms of no CSMs, but just support or whatever models you're going with, right? I think the key is not only just to get insights at the management level, but how do you bring these insights available to the nth employee, not overwhelm them with everything, but that's actionable enough, right? What is that? What does that mean? That means is, setting up, in support, all prioritization of your queues based on these insight extractions and not, based, did you breach your SLA? Did you breach your SLA? I mean, that drives a different behavior. In success, it's kind of helping them manage more customers, but kind of setting thresholds that are not set up just based on the account level, but is also based downstream on the product and also on the support level. Like, I've seen, I'm not going to name companies, how many success leaders are getting into resolving and commenting on every Zendesk ticket? And I'm like, dude, that's not your job.
Totally.
Your job is to extract and see historical trends on support and product usage to say, where is this customer going to land? How is this customer feeling, right? And those things are getting so lost in success becoming more tactical setup and kind of giving everything as opposed to strategic. Just, support should be just giving you insights. You should never, ever have to ever log into a Zendesk or an Intercom, or, Intercom, depending if you're offering that on the as a live chat, or even in Service Cloud to ever look at a case ever in your life, right? It should just give you insights.
Amen to that. I think there's a lot of listeners that are probably applauding you right now in their cars and in their headphones right now. So yeah, I want to jump into the third pillar of process. So I mean, you've done an awesome job of laying out sort of how the team has been built and how you guys think about tools and technology, how you lever that. What about process? As you guys have grown the business and as you've scaled the loops, and now you're working with a bunch of awesome companies, how has process kind of played into this? Has there been a way that you and the team have sort of managed your tribal knowledge or chronicled all the things that are going on? Or like, and then you mentioned some of the folks in your team, some of the stuff is complex, some of the data ops and the data tech side, that can be a little bit more difficult. So sometimes you have to translate that for other folks that might be more sales, marketing, or success minded. But what have been some of the ways that you guys have sort of wrangled process as you've built the business? And what would be like a tip or two, or just like some general nuggets that you want to leave for our listeners around how maybe they should be thinking about process within their business?
Yeah, no, I think, at end of this, Adrian, I want to give you the AI, 4 pillars of AI for CX, how you got to look at it.
Fantastic. Yeah.
This is more from a setup standpoint. Process is very key. And I'm going to talk it from a product standpoint as opposed to how we did at the loops, because we're offering this for CX leaders. From a product perspective, you want a platform that's not only just giving you AI elements, but that's actually kickstarting the process layer of it as also downstream, right? And that's what I kind of highlighted, Adrian, when I said it needs to be actionable insights. It just can't be insights that the management is consuming. How are you putting it in their day-to-day transactional workflows? So then you can see these insights kind of landing into the business outcomes that you want to see. So from a process standpoint, what we have started to do in the Loops platform itself is actually give you a process for swarming, give you a process for escalation management,
Like
give you
that.
a process for backlog management, give you a process for setting up notification thresholds in Slack for anything where CSMs get triggered downstream, something is happening.
Yep.
These are templates in our product that you can go ahead and configure and expand into and learn, because some people come and say, okay, I'm starting with swarming, walk me through it. Everybody's process is different. So we're giving you some starting point. And the way the loops has been designed as a platform that over a period of time, when you get onto it, now we just have 20 25 customers using it actively, but when we're up to 100 customers we can start doing benchmarking.
Definitely.
Now
100%.
you can say, okay, now for backlog management in my industry with my space, how do I stand
Yep.
against everybody else? Where
Yep.
do I need now? Not sharing any of the numbers because it's more of a metadata extraction and
Totally.
normalization across customers,
Yep.
but that gives you a roadmap to say, oh, you know what, companies of my size in my industry are doing this. So what do I need to do to improve to get there without spending endless dollars with those, big shot consulting firms that kind of come and do this? But that's the way we are designing these process flows in the system, considering that we know it's going to be very different from everybody, but everybody goes through the same
I
pain of
do.
setting up
Yep.
swarming.
Totally.
Everybody goes through the same pain of doing escalation management.
Absolutely.
And how do you make that much more easily configurable with a drag and drop capability based on an insight, as opposed to sitting and manually creating this with endless developers? We have actually saved, at Bloomreach, I mean, they'll quote on it, we've saved them 2 months of developers time on building these processes with
Nice. Yep.
drag and drop using loops. And there's endless other customers that I can kind of highlight, where one customer came and said, I have to beg, borrow, steal developers to make changes to my
That's,
system.
hey, that's a lot of CX and CS leaders, Somya, right there. That's a lot of us.
That's what I think we're making. Hey, this technology is available to DevOps, right?
Yep.
Teams. This technology is available to RevOps too. So why not CX ops organizations start getting a platform that's making their life a little bit better?
I love that you're saying that. I say it constantly on the show, and I say it constantly to our clients and our prospects, which is marketing has their operative tools, sales has their operative tools, finance has their operative tools. What do you mean that your retention bucket and the 80% of the revenue that you're going to make this year can't get their operative functions and resources? And again, but you said something earlier in the show, Somya, we're at an interesting point in time in this space right now where a lot of leadership teams are starting to get it. They get it, they understand it. Or here's another trade-off for you. It's kind of going back to what we talked about, which is, okay, we might have best in class here, and we might have best in class ticketing, we might have best in class usability, we might have the Tableau, the Looker, the BI, the Power BI, but who is helping to do the democratization and the socialization of what that data is saying is a whole other story. That's a whole other thing. And then lastly, it's just this idea of the actionability piece. I love that you keep bringing this up, which is like, guys, who cares if you guys are, who cares if you have the best customer and employee feedback strategy in the world? And this is perfect because we're about to get into the fourth pillar of feedback, but who cares if you guys have the best collection methodology in the world if you're not doing anything with it? If you're going to ask your customers every month for all this great stuff, or you're going to ask your employees every single month or every single quarter or minimally once a year for all these great ideas, all this great feedback, and then you do no action with it, why? Don't even bother. Just
Exactly.
keep doing
Right.
the
I mean,
normal day-to-day.
look at this, Adrian. DevOps team have their own and there are endless operating tools out there. Revenue ops has Clary and endless of those kind of tools. Why are they not using Tableau and Looker if it was that easy for them to do forecasting and stuff like that? Why is CX always realizing, just I'm not bidding on Tableau or Looker in those sense. They are good tools, but they were generational old analytical tools for cleansing your data. They were not insight tools using AI. They're not tools that are making actionable downstream workflows set up for you. So there is a change that's happening for CX. And, I'm not saying Loops is the only platform that's offering this, but it's giving you the capabilities that go by far beyond these analytical tools that were like what 20-year-old tools,
Totally. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
everybody else is adopting, like, why is sales and marketing not using Tableau just to do their revenue ops or marketing ops today, right?
Yeah.
So I think
100%.
CX has to look at differently.
Very much agree with you. So, I mean, let's dive into the last pillar of feedback. I'd love to hear what are some of the ways that you guys have been leveraging your customer feedback as you've grown the loops. And then I'd love to understand some of the ways that you leverage your employee and your team feedback on a regular basis to continue to fan the flames of growth and continue to scale into the future. Just talk about feedback.
Yeah, no, I love your framework here, Adrian, on the way you've kind of articulated all the four pillars and how, Loops is designed around this. So I'm again going to talk about the platform itself, right? I love it because this just gives us so much validation on what we're doing, right? So collaboration was a key element that we fundamentally built in Loops platform, and collaboration in the form of audit, right? If I'm seeing an insight, a group of an insight on a particular issue, and I'm going to go down and saying authentication just to be a high level, right? We just released a feature around authentication, and all of a sudden I'm seeing a plethora of tickets getting created that are escalated into engineering. And anything that moves into engineering at some point gets, I don't want to say gets lost, but how do you nudge the engineering team to say this is high priority? Because they always want to work on new feature releases. They don't want to fix bugs. They don't want to fix, customer
Wait, you
issues.
don't just keep resubmitting the same JIRA ticket again and again and again. That doesn't get that doesn't get their attention.
Exactly, right?
I'm
So
kidding. I'm kidding to all of our DevOps fans. I'm just totally kidding.
so in Loops, what we've done is, with a click of a button, you can actually share with your product teams in Jira the impact that was created, and how much of it, if it's open for this duration of the time, what is the cost of it that's getting affected to the organization, which is always in the terms of looking at ARR and renewal
Yep.
dates.
Yep.
And if there are renewals of certain customers that are coming up, then your impact score just goes off the roof. So now when engineering is looking at their backlog in terms of bugs and feature requests, guess what? Every item that's escalated from support or success, depending on how you've set up, has an impact associated with it that they can look at. So it makes prioritization and getting in those meetings even more better, because
Yep.
now you're saying, okay, wait, why are you adding this new feature?
Yep.
Because I don't see any impact to that. But by the way, here's these 5 things. Look how you can move and give me $5 million
Yep.
of an uphill.
Yep.
Changes the discussion all of a sudden, which is now there's no gut feel that I'm coming and saying, oh, this is, Microsoft is a customer that's asking, and we know they're paying you a lot of dollars, but it's more sort of look at these 10 customers and look at their revenue impact. And if you
Yep.
don't resolve it in this time window, look what business impact, what, churn is going to look like for us, right?
Yeah. That's
It
huge.
changes the dynamic of that meeting
Yep.
completely.
Yep.
And what do you have to do? Just set up loops on day one so that everybody's on the same page of your revenue and business outcomes.
I love it. And then what about the employee side? What are some ways that you guys have been collecting and leveraging information from your employees and your teams?
So in our, in startup, our employees are the experts, because each one of my developers from day one is very exposed to customers and is on customers. Some of the customer calls, we record all our customer calls, and make it available, because that was something very close to me, that you can't build a product without your developers having the feel of the customers, in terms of how they liked a certain feature. Because it's like my CTO Ravi will kind of highlight. He keeps talking to his developers saying that your code is like building a component of a Ferrari, where the engineer actually signs saying that I have built this element for this car, right?
That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
anything that you're checking in is your footprint,
Yep.
in terms of you're signing that you're checking this into the big mammoth of the loops platform that you're building. So you got to own it, and you got to feel it, and you got to understand the outcomes that it's going to have at every step of the point. And you can't make that happen till they actually have driven a Ferrari to experience the car, or
Yeah.
you've been in a customer meeting where you're listening on how the feedback
Absolutely.
or how the feature was received. So that's how we are getting our employees involved in building the solution and getting the pain point felt from the customer on anything that they release out there. And we can afford to do that because we're a small organization. But in big organizations, I think that really helps drive the why. You know,
Sure.
why are we doing this?
I love it. Somya Kapoor, this has been absolutely fantastic. Before I let you go, where can our listeners either get in touch with you or your team, and where can they learn more about the loops, and where can they learn more about the product that you guys have built?
Definitely. The loops.io is the website. We have contact at theloops.ai, that you can send and book a demo at any given point of time. There is a phenomenal blog up there from PayPal that we did, where we spoke about the 4 pillars of AI. Um,
Awesome.
well, actually, Santosh kind of highlighted 6, so I'm going to bring it down to 4, because Adrian, you have 4 pillars of CX. I have 4 pillars of AI
I
to
love it.
be leveraged in CX, that we spoke about, on how, fundamentally a platform needs to be brought in to align support and success together, how we can make success leaders superheroes, because this is their moment. This
Yeah.
is their year,
Yep.
in terms of the articulation that they want to see, and the benefit that they can add to the top line of being ahead of the game. And the only way you can do that is when you have a contextualized data insight that you can make it actionable downstream. That's how sales and marketing has been
Totally.
doing it the last 10 years. And I
Absolutely.
just feel that's how CX leaders need to do it today.
I love it. Well, Somya, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the CX Chronicles podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing the story about how the Loops has been building and tackling the 4 CX pillars. I look forward to keeping our conversation going into the future. And again, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Same here. Pleasure is mine.